Running from the man, yeah, the madman's coming, yeah, the man's gunning for me tonight. I spent the last week running from the heat, but the beat's coming alive. Let's get lost tonight. Lord, who's on my right?
Hello, wackos. Welcome to another episode of Without a Country. We are back on the live stream. We pre-recorded last week because of good old Thanksgiving. You know, mommy's favorite holiday. Not. I hope you had a good one. I'm glad it's over and we don't have to do it again until next year. Got wildly, no matter what I do, I get wildly, there's something about Thanksgiving food, even if I'm careful, if I eat the right things. I ate a limited amount this year. I get just I'm so ill the next day. I'm ill. It's not good it's not autoimmune disease friendly Thanksgiving. But yeah, my whole family has started going. We just don't do the turkey anymore. It's the whole thing is vegetarian, which I love. It's very satisfying. I mean, during Thanksgiving season, there is a plethora of animal cruelty videos about turkeys. Obviously, PETA's trying to make their point, as are other animal advocacy groups, but. Last night after dinner, Mercy for Animals animal abuse video popped up on my feed. And again, we know I got to stop watching these. My mom's told me, other assorted loved ones have told me I gotta stop doing it, but I can't. And so right after dinner, this video of chickens getting murdered came on, and the way they did it, so they were all hanging by their feet upside down, and they pass through an electric bath where they are shocked to stun them before a machine slits all of their throats. And the fun part is some chickens, because they're flailing around because they're so nervous, they miss the electric bath. And then then a person is there checking to see any chickens that the machine misses. They get to slit their throat manually. And then sometimes it misses both of them and they get to the plucker still alive. And I guess they've seen all their friends murdered by then. So I don't know what happens. But yeah, this was the first time that I actually threw up. From watching an animal abuse video. So that was fun. That was like a new first. You know how, I think they say that adult time moves faster during adulthood because you're going through less unique and new experiences, right? Because you've just kind of done many of these things before, whereas in childhood, so many things are new, so time passes more slowly. But guys, it doesn't have to be this way. This is the first time I threw up due to an animal cruelty video, and I've seen a lot of them. So really, I guess this story is all to say anything is possible. And welcome to the show, wackos. I do want to let you know, it's already December, so I've already gotten that text from my good pal Emilio Savone at New York Comedy Club, asking me if I'm going to do my annual New Year's Eve show. And I said, yes, Emilio, I'm doing my annual New Year's Eve show. So we are going to be doing that. It is at the New York Comedy Club location in the East Village. Perfect location to just immediately start partying after. It is the perfect pregame event for the year's earliest going out night, because everything's done by midnight. So so the show is at 6 o'clock as usual. And we really start at 6 because there's a show at 8 and we have a packed lineup. I put all my friends on there, Tim Burton style. It is always so fun, and I'm going to make sure that they all do jokes that you didn't see last year, including myself. So it's me. It's Harrison Greenbaum, who I don't think was on there last year, but one of my good friends. Ryan Long, Danny Polishchuk, Chloe LeBranch, Lev Fur, AJ Giro, and possibly, I didn't ask her yet, but if she's in town, I know she'll be there, Christina Hutchinson. I got to ask her. We were talking about something else today and I didn't get to it, but you know what? if she's in town, if she's going to be in town, I'm sure she'll do it. But don't hold me accountable for that one yet. That's a maybe. The other ones are confirmed. All right, let's get right into the show. As I said on the pre-show, today was a big day for shootings. Obviously, the CEO of United Health was fucking gunned down, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But there was a shooting at a Christian school in California, and the gunman is dead, and 2 students were wounded. And there's not really a lot of information on it, but it's just it was a small school. The enrollment is only 33 students. This is from the New York Post. At a small Seventh-day Adventist school in California, gunfire broke out around 1 p.m. at the Feather River School of Seventh-day Adventists in Palermo, California, and it's an elementary school. 2 students were wounded and taken to the hospital. No information about them has been released. Officials confirmed it was a male gunman that was found at the scene with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He killed himself. And he is not believed to have any connection to the school, according to the sheriff. But wild day. And you're thinking, like, a school that small, like, what was the motive here? What's going on? Very, very strange. Very sad, hoping that both of those kids make it through. I know one had to be airlifted. But again, as I said on the pre-show, I think any gunshot wound to a child is pretty serious. So they're going to take it. They're going to airlift those kids if they need to. Moving right into enemy of the state. This week's enemy of the state, guys, is David Gregory. He's a House representative who was elected to the state Senate in Missouri in November. And guys, he got right to work, okay?
Enemy of the state.
This man got right to work after being voted in. He has presented a bounty hunter bill. And I learned about this on Instagram on an account that I'm just going to flop over to my Instagram because I want to recommend this account to you, especially with all the impending like deportation nonsense we're going to go through with the Trump administration. And especially if you are here undocumented or if someone you love is here undocumented, I highly recommend you follow this immigration attorney on Instagram. Her name is Attorney Martinez, spelled exactly the way you think it would be spelled. She's wonderful. She fights so hard for immigrants. She has an account in both English and Spanish, which is great. You can send all the videos in Spanish to people who need them. If they don't speak English. And she really breaks down immigration law for everybody. And it's I think a WACO a while ago recommended I follow her, and she's been a great follow. And she is the one who alerted me, I mean, not personally, just by watching her reels, to this bounty hunter bill. And she explains it, but I pulled up an article to explain it further to the WACOs. So I'm taking this actually from a local news source, firstalert4.com. It says, this is Nazi Germany stuff. Civil rights attorney reacts to Missouri state senator's proposed bounty hunter bill. Lawmakers with ties to St. Louis are pushing new bills to create a bounty hunter program in Missouri. It would pay people to turn in people they think are residing in the U.S. illegally. Senate Bill 72 was submitted on December 1st and is sponsored by Sunset Hills-based David Gregory, a House representative who was elected to the state Senate in November. Gregory wants to pay Missourians up to $1,000 if they turn someone in. First Alert 4 reached out to Gregory on Tuesday for an interview. He has not responded. The first part reads that someone in the country illegally is prohibited from voting in any election, receiving any permit or license to drive, receiving any public benefit, and becoming a legal resident of the state. The proposed bill also calls for the Department of Public Safety to develop the Missouri Illegal Alien Certified Bounty Hunter Program that would certify Missouri residents to be bounty hunters to find and detain immigrants without legal status in the state. I mean, this is horrendous. That as if we weren't in America right now suspicious enough of our fellow countrymen and women. Now we're going to be bounty hunting them for a monetary reward. Truly crazy. This does not make life better. In Missouri, local attorney Javad Kazali told First Alert 4 Investigates on Tuesday. He called the proposed legislation the worst written bill I've seen, and said to put a bounty on someone's head because someone believes they are here illegally is incredibly dangerous. And I mean, let's just imagine the amount of racism that's going to go into this. Stop. As a civil rights attorney, that's great for me, Kazali explained. It'll take 1 week for a Puerto Rican who has been harassed. This is a classic demanding papers. You must have your papers everywhere. This is Nazi Germany stuff. Kazali is a former U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement prosecutor and said this program is a solution looking for problems. When I was at ICE, we had under the second Bush administration, under George W. Bush, we had a program where we deputized local police officers to help. Kazali shared. That was a disaster many times because they didn't know how to distinguish if someone was from the U.S. or not. A whole bunch of them thought Puerto Ricans were foreigners. This will be a big problem. The bill states the Department of this is like a South Park episode. And I know I've said that many times on the show before, but it continues to be like a South Park episode. The bill states the Department of Public Safety shall develop an information system for people to report violations, including a toll-free telephone hotline, email, and online reporting portal. There is no easier way to harass people of color than to allow a phone number where I can call and claim they are not here documented and expect police to crash through their doors, Kazali shared. This is ripe for abuse. This is purely harassment. Or for, if this is like in places with no-knock warrants, I wonder if we're going to have another incident where people are like truly slain in their own homes. The bill summary clearly states that any person who makes a report in which an illegal alien is arrested shall receive a reward of $1,000. Kazali told First Alert 4 Investigates that the state's attorney general and Republican state lawmakers don't seem to care about fixing real problems and do things to grab headlines. Which they do things to grab headlines. A great example of that is Nancy Mace, who we didn't know who the hell she was until a couple weeks ago when she got on her, no men in quotes allowed in women's bathrooms, soapbox. And as we then found out, she had been very openly pro-LGBTQ people when that was hot. And now because the opposite of that is hot, she has now swayed that way. And it makes you think, well, number one, how do you really feel? And ties into this big problem I have with the mixing of celebrity and politician. And that's something I've been thinking about a lot as someone who is in the entertainment business and not even wants to transition, wants to also be involved in politics. You're like, how do you govern in a way that is fair and that is authentic and that has integrity, living in this world where politicians almost seemingly have to be a little bit famous to get the public to back them and to get things done? Like, I don't know. If you have ideas, email me withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. I know how to make a promise and stick to it. I guess that's like the main thing. And you need an audience. You need to publicize yourself. But it's like you have to continuously, I guess, wake up every day and be like, I'm not doing anything. I'm not going to do anything just for attention. I'm not going to do anything for money. I cannot be swayed by public appearances. If, I'm on Jimmy Kimmel or something to talk about politics, I'm going to say the truth. I'm not going to say something that's just going to be like funny just for the sake of being clipped into an Instagram reel. I'll just be funny because I am. Have we seen a major problem with unlawful immigration in Missouri? Kazali asked. Where you see people working are in all of our restaurants, all of our construction sites, all of our farms, all of our golf courses. These are not jobs Americans are vying for. If you have a system like this and you incentivize one restaurant to call another because they have some cooks, you will see businesses close, prices go up. This is a solution looking for problems, he said. A summary for SB 72 is on the Missouri Senate's website if you're interested in reading it further. And also, for me, this talking point of, it is undocumented people who do these jobs that Americans are not willing to do. That kind of annoys me. It's become this talking point that we use when we're talking about immigration. And I don't feel like it's necessary to say that these people are doing jobs that Americans are unwilling to do. I think the main point here is that they are human beings and they should be treated humanely and not hunted down by other human beings for a fee. That's what I think. It's the same as when we have to make, as women, a million other excuses for reasons that we get abortions or use birth control. You know what the reason we get the abortions and use birth control? Because it's our body and we do whatever the fuck we want. That's the reason. And I just think that human beings should be treated like human beings. I'm not saying everyone should be allowed in. Obviously, there has to be some kind of a process or a quota. But I think if people are able to get into the country and as you know, go through truly crazy things to get here, risk their lives if we're talking about bravery. They risk their lives to come to this country, and then we're going to hunt them down, like they said, Holocaust style. Disgusting. All right, let's get into the WACO mailbag. I gotta say, I saved some of these because you weren't here last week, Mike. He was busy shutting down drag queen story hour in libraries. No, he just forgot. Imagine if that was the reason you had to shut down a drag queen story hour.
We're gonna make Queen safe again.
Oh, we missed you, Mike. We never get more emails than when we talk about school or teachers or nurses on this show. That being said, the conversation Mike and I had a couple weeks ago about the Department of Education and homeschooling elicited a number of emails. I read them all. Thank you for sending them. And I picked two that I wanted to share again while Mike was in the studio. So this first one is from WACO Juliana. This is regarding a conversation with Mike about the Department of Education. And I just want to say for the record, I love you, Mike. I think many of our listeners do love you. They just disagree with you. That's not why I'm reading it. And again, if you want to spite me and tip Mike extra, please feel free to do so if you're watching live on YouTube. All the money goes to homeschooling his daughter, Aura. So, hi, Corinne. I wanted to reach out regarding the discussion you and Mike had a few weeks ago regarding the Department of Education. Apologies, I am behind. It seems like Mike got caught up in some surface-level right-wing talking points, one of those being the states will get to choose how to educate their citizens if the department is defunded. Well, states already do. The Department of Education, federal level, does not dictate curriculum. Local and state governments currently do that. The Department of Education oversees certain things to ensure fairness across the board and is very limited in their scope, but important. And also, this is not surprising that the curriculum is not dictated at a federal level. That's why you see such disparities in the public education system between states. We read, we went through the states, and some states like Louisiana are absolutely suffering, whereas states like, surprisingly, New Jersey are thriving. All right, the writer continues, if you've ever heard of an IEP, They are educational goals and resources for students with disabilities in public/charter schools. My autistic niece has one. My husband's niece with a visual disability has one too. That is the Department of Education. And then she clips a quote from NPR. Those roles include protecting students' civil rights, dispersing Title I funds for students in poverty and students with disabilities, collecting data on schools, and administering federal student loans for higher education. It is not an agency that is telling schools what to do. They're not defining curriculum. They're not telling schools which teachers they can hire or which books to use or anything along those lines, which I think is interesting because so many parents who voted for Trump, and this is not, this is aside from Mike, I know other people who have said this, they expressed concern for this, quote unquote, woke agenda leaking into the school curriculum. Well, it's like, first of all, that's a state issue. And second of all, like, you have full control over where you live. So if you want to make sure that your child is educated in the way that you want them to be, you got to either move to a red state, or homeschool your kid. So getting rid of the department wouldn't change the curriculum at all. It would actually just put girls, students with disabilities, students in poverty, etc., at a greater disadvantage. We would also potentially have no student loan program, making college inaccessible for most people, or opening them up to even more predatory private loans. Also, not collecting data on schools doesn't seem like the best idea either, but sounds like a great way to not hold people accountable for dumbing down their citizens. I am very passionate about this subject and wanted to throw in my thoughts on some realities. So thanks to Juliana for writing that. And this second email is from a homeschooled person, a WACO named Sarah.
Ooh-wee.
Yeah, so you're excited.
I'm very excited.
Sarah's very smart.
So, and she was homeschooled?
Yeah, and
Let's go.
Not the whole time. She didn't get her master's degree from her dad, and she has one. But I think
that would be dope.
I
if
think
I
she
could
has
give
two,
Aura
actually.
her master's.
Yeah, a master's in life is good. All right, so this says, hi, Corinne. I just finished listening to your Thanksgiving episode where you mentioned homeschooling and the dangers that it poses to public school funding and readiness for the world. As a former homeschooled kid, I wanted to write in with my perspective and thoughts. I'm a 33-year-old white woman who currently lives in Texas. I grew up and was homeschooled in Indiana. I went to public school kindergarten and then was homeschooled from first grade through my senior year of high school. My sister is 4 years older than me, and she went to public school through fourth grade. She was homeschooled from fifth grade through her graduation. We both went to college, and we both have a master's degree, and I have 2 master's degrees. We were not required to register as a homeschooled family in Indiana. I remember taking standardized tests at a local private school for a couple years in elementary school, but I didn't participate in any other standardized testing until PSAT, SAT, and ACT time. My parents made the decision to homeschool us when I was going into first grade and my sister was going into fifth grade because of our educational needs. I was really advanced for my age, reading at a 6th grade level in kindergarten. Wow, that's impressive. And my sister had some behavioral issues that seemed ADHD related and was making B's and C's. And my mom knew my sister had more potential. Parent-teacher conferences at the end of the year were enough to light a fire under my mom's ass, and she took the leap to homeschool us with the full support of my dad. My mom has a master's in elementary education. So right there, this is a bit of a unique circumstance because your mother was like wildly equipped to do this. So she, but I mean, obviously the writer knows that. I'm just like reiterating. So she absolutely knew what she was doing for the first few years of homeschooling us. We both had a great foundation in elementary school, and I was allowed to move ahead in the areas where I excelled and stay closer to the appropriate grade level in the areas where I was average. My sister got the help she needed and started excelling academically. When we got older and my mom didn't feel equipped to teach us things like algebra, chemistry, and physics, and a side note, I did go to public school the whole time. But I basically was homeschooled in math in that every day my dad would literally reteach me the math lesson because the math, I just had I had no idea. I would come home every day and have literally no idea what I learned in math class. And also it was one of the few classes that I wasn't in like an honors or AP class. And I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back. I'm saying that because that means that, so I'm obviously worse in math. That's why I'm not in an honors or an AP class. But then on top of it, when you're not in an honors or an AP class, most times in public school, the class is larger. So it's more students than the teacher can really handle. I remember my math class was like 35 people and they're not honors or AP. So there's a lot more behavioral issues. So the teacher spent a lot more time like yelling at students and sending students to the principal's office. It was absolute chaos. And I just absolutely couldn't learn anything. And so I thankfully had a dad who got a perfect math SAT score, which I don't think everyone is privy to. So I went home and every single day in high school, he retaught me the lesson. And then I understood it completely, Or I don't say completely. I think mostly. I still wasn't good at math, but at least I had an idea of what was going on. I could complete the assignments, I could get through with like a B. We joined a homeschool group where parents with various qualifications taught the different classes. Again, very organized here. A mom who was a chemical engineer did chemistry and physics classes. I don't know how she had the time, but God bless. And we did bi-weekly labs at her home. My biggest class had 12 students in it, and my smallest class had 2. So this is a little bit different than homeschooling because it looks like people kind of almost unionized in the area that you lived and created this like secondary community school system, which is incredible. We met every week on Fridays at a church building where we did classes, and then we had homework throughout the week. Again, like I said before, no one can unionize like religious people. My parents are extremely religious, so while the motivation for homeschooling us didn't have anything to do with religious reasons, they quickly moved to a more extreme religious curriculum. This influenced my education much more than my sister's, but we were both taught that evolution is a lie. The earth is 10,000 years old. The Greek and Roman empires fell because they accepted homosexuality and all sorts of other things. In my high school career, once my sister was off to college, my mom discovered a new curriculum that had us examining famous works throughout history, like the Iliad and the Odyssey, Frankenstein, 1984, Animal Farm, and comparing them to the Bible. We picked everything apart and compared it to the biblical worldview. My education was, in a nutshell, a Christian nationalist education. If you've seen the documentary Shiny Happy People about the Duggar family, I have, of TLC 17 Kids and Counting fame, I'm obsessed with the Duggars. You have no idea. Anything on TLC, I'll just eat it right up. I graduated high school having never read To Kill a Mockingbird or Jane Eyre, but I have read all of John Calvin's Institutes of Christian Religion. He was a reformer from the 1500s. Thrilling stuff. And honestly, I know you see that as something negative. I have read To Kill a Mockingbird. I don't believe I've read Jane Eyre. But I do actually also wish I had read John Calvin's Institutes of Christian Religion. I actually wish, even though I believe, I kind of look at it, most of it as mythology. I don't see why if we're reading Greek mythology, we shouldn't have a basic overview of the major world religions. I think it would actually help us as young people to understand why people think the way they do and why the world is set up in the way that it is. I'd like to back up and tell a little bit about the pros and cons of being homeschooled from my perspective. One of the pros was that I was taught time management at a young age. I love that. I'm an independent person with a lot of drive, so it was easy for me to learn to balance my weekly homework load with all my other responsibilities. I babysat 2 days a week for another homeschooled family, taught piano lessons, and was able to practice piano 3+ hours a day. My degrees are all in classical music and music education. That would have been impossible for me had I been in public school. Yeah, but I know a little bit of this reminds me of my childhood, and I'm like, did you have enough fun? Like I was like in 87 clubs and like I did have fun like twirling and like doing the school play and like stuff like that. But I mean, it was like having a job. I mean, my theater program, I was like being a working actor when I was, 13 years old. I don't know that it was really necessary in retrospect. It's sometimes I think I'm like, oh, maybe the reason I never like drank or did any of that was just because I didn't have time to be bad. That's why I'm bad now. This also allowed me to save up money from babysitting and teaching piano to eventually buy my own grand piano at 16. When I got to college, I felt equipped to balance a university class schedule with homework, practicing piano, etc., since I had already been operating under a similar schedule with my mom's supervision since I was 12 or 13. Additionally, but did you like ever get to like choreograph a dance to spice up your life in your friend Vicky's basement? Because that's important too. And I'm not that just seems like you had a lot going on, Did you have time for that? Additionally, my education really taught me to think. I love that. Unfortunately, it was all Christian coded, but when I grew up and got out of my parents' narrow-minded evangelical world, I was able to use those critical thinking skills to grow and change. And I absolutely think that public school, and I'm sure private school too, does not encourage critical thinking enough. Because why would it? Then you would revolt against the administration. The unfortunate part of all that is that I barely talk to my parents anymore, since my beliefs have changed so much, and I never speak to my sister because she has become even more entrenched in my parents' belief system. Oh, that sucks. She is also clearly the favorite, but she's done everything in quotes right. She has 2 kids, 2 dogs, a husband, and a part-time career that allows her to be the perfect wife and mother while also using that advanced degree of hers. I think it's so weird when parents care what your marital status is. I'm lucky. My parents don't, especially not my dad. I think I'm one of the lucky ones. Our homeschool group gave me the socialization I needed, and I was able to begin my career as a piano teacher and musician early on in life, since homeschooling gave me the schedule I needed to pursue my craft at a young age. So I'm glad you did something fun. I had a great group of friends, some of whom I'm still in touch with, and a pretty drama-free high school experience. But the drama is where the fun is, girl. Leaving the world of homeschooling was tough. I remember the first time I was in a room with a couple of sassy gay guys. I was 18 or 19, and the banter, pop culture references, and manner of speaking might as well have been a foreign language to me. I remember meeting a friend I went to a Bible study with, and she told me she loved Obama, and my immediate response was, you can't be a Christian and a Democrat, because that's what I was taught my whole life. I remember making out with a girl when I was 20 and being so confused why it felt good, and I didn't admit to being queer until I was like 28. The internal homophobia was real. I also remember having sex with a boy for the first time at 25 and my life not ending and thinking, oh, is that what they spent my entire childhood warning me about? I wasn't allowed to watch the movie Pocahontas because it was historically inaccurate, and I didn't see Hercules till I was 31. It was historically inaccurate, but probably not for the reasons your parents were saying. The things I missed out on in the 90s and early 2000s make me so sad, because experiencing those movies and songs for the first time at 33 is a very different experience than if I were 16. There was one black family in our homeschool group the entire time I was there, one, and no other ethnicities were represented. Unfortunately, many of my friends who were homeschooled are not as lucky as I was. One of my good friends in high school had to go to an educational intervention program because she could barely read in 9th grade. She was able to get her act together and graduate high school relatively successfully. The social awkwardness is out of this world. The narrow-minded thinking that permeates so many people's lives makes me sad. One year, and again, like I would say this is not like, yes, I think like part of this is homeschool, but I know so many people, not so much the social awkwardness unless they're like on the spectrum or something, and that's a different thing. But narrow-minded thinking is certainly not homeschool specific. 1 year, because whether or not we are homeschooled for our educational curriculum, we are homeschooled in our views, religious, political, I mean, remember when you were a kid and you would have like an election, a faux election in school? You would just raise your hand for whoever your parents were voting for. That's all that was. 1 year, I told my mom I was hosting Thanksgiving dinner for friends and I was making the turkey, and she said, "You can't make the turkey, you're not married." Hilarious. This is just never even heard that before. That I love that though. I mean, I don't love it. I love that I'm hearing it for the first time and how apeshit it is. This is just a small, silly example of the kind of qualifications these people tend to put on womanhood, someone's validity in the world, and more. Women are taught, I mean, it's also like, it's not, if you're trying to train women to be a good wife, you better let them make the turkey before they're married. Otherwise, their husband's going to be very disappointed. You should let them help make the turkey when they're kids, Women are taught to only go to college to find a husband. There is little value placed on women beyond having kids and raising kids to prop up their husbands. One family in our homeschool group had a few biological kids and had adopted a bunch of foster kids, and the father became sexually abusive to the girls in the family and told the young kids to call one of the older daughters their new mother. I believe he was imprisoned for his abuse, but the mom continued to raise her children. Homeschooling is often used as a means for neglect or outright abuse, educational neglect, because why would girls need to learn how to do things like algebra or calculus if they're just going to have babies? Homeschooling also shields kids from having to interact with mandatory reporters. That's a good point. A big part of me wonders if the abuse in that family would have been caught earlier had the children been in public school and signs could have been seen by teachers. Isolation is a big problem in the homeschooling world. I am not wholeheartedly opposed to homeschooling, but I am fully in favor of regulations and accountability. Someone from the government will have to check in or something. I am grateful for my own educational background, but I still suffer the consequences of social isolation and not being exposed to people different from me before I was in college. I'm grateful. And again, I know people who weren't homeschooled who went to college and that was their first time meeting a Jewish person or a black person. So it's not only homeschooled kids. You can certainly be in a narrow-minded and not diverse place, even if you're in public school, depending on where you live. I'm grateful for my mom's brilliance as a teacher and the fact that she knew her limitations, yes, and sought to give me a well-rounded education even when she wasn't equipped to teach me everything. Hope you enjoy this perspective. Thanks for all you do with WAC and GWF. Love from Texas. Thank you so much for writing. I thought that was really interesting and really well written. And my point there was that look how smart you can be even if you were homeschooled. No, that's not my point. I just thought it was really interesting and kind of had a lot of pros and cons, right? All right, now let's get into our WACO Patreon roll call. Shout out to our dictator, our reigning dictator, Hannah Pendergrass, our capitalist pigs, Emily Mame, Ryan Beckland, Aaron Fejas, Joy Turner, Dylan, Joe P., Nicole Perks, Elle Watson, Holly Clark, Joshua Callahan, Stephanie Anderson, Brandy Otter, Brandon Oglesby, Lauren Manu, Carrie, Caroline Bonner, Erica Backus, Lisa Ashbacher, Barbara Mondragon, Delaney Muncie, Randy Peterson, Tegan, McKenna Hansen, Leah M. Ellers, Laura Lynn Pearson, Christopher Fanguy, Nora Smark, Hale Stiers, EMCP 333, Camilla Driggs, Jenny Lynn, Carolyn, Katie Robbins, Hannah Ronaldo, Jennifer Daly, Catherine Best, Tim Ackerman, Boo Batsy, Lakin Keen, Lil Floha, Jesse Paygrain, Audra Williams, Crystal Schmidt, Shelby Snyder, Michael Fow, Amber Christensen, Talene Georgian, Lila Lee Soley, Jasmine Grant, Bridget Luke, Marisa James, Truggle, Brittany Gustus, Alex Hart, Sierra Mataro, and my cuties, a couple new ones this week, Caitlin Owens, Jim Black Squirrel, Ivy Espana, Lily, Justin Choi, Tina Nelson, Brianna Middleman, Samantha Johnson, Esther Van Alst, Jasmine Ruiz, Lauren Natinsky, Jessica Michelle, Laura Wolf, Morgan, Amanda, Elizabeth Snell, Emma Flowers, Emily, Karen Denise, Amir Hassan, Elisa McCall, Long Arms Length, Sophia Tauber, Gemma James, Miranda, Emily Eckelberger, Rebecca _99, Cavs 138, Zoe Ross, Annie Green, Heidi Lundquist, Nicole, Carl Murphy, Margarita Cranova, Beth Brunner, Lauren Morkill, Chris Gordon, Tori Colster, Desiree Coutinho, Kristen Hood, Sammy Lane, Ms. Mack, Emily LaFontano, and Fright Lab. Boo, boo, boo. Thank you so much. If you want to join a Patreon and get one exclusive news story every week, we have multiple tiers. Everyone is available except for Dictator. Only one Dictator is allowed per month, and Hannah Pendergrass is still our reigning Dictator. Capitalist Pigs is just $11 a month, and Cuties are just $6 a month. You get one exclusive video news story every week that I record right after the main show, and it is uploaded to the Patreon on Thursday evening with a premiere usually around 9 p.m. on Thursdays. You can head over to patreon.com/without-a-country if you want to be a part of the Patreon. It's also a cool holiday gift idea for someone in your life who enjoys news or wants to get more into news or is pursuing a career in politics. We'd love to have you. And again, it does directly go back to the show. All right, let's go. I'm going to do the main story first this week because this is something we talked about last week. Our main story of the week is the Hunter Biden pardon. And there's this subscription called Tangle. It's free that a WACO recommended. And I think this is the first time I'm using Tangle on the show. But they kind of pick interesting points made on both the right and the left. And then the guy who runs it, named Isaac Saul, gives his own take. And then I'll also give my own take. So it has very much a Without a Country vibe. In the fine print, it says, I'm Isaac Saul, and this is Tangle, an independent, nonpartisan, subscriber-supported politics newsletter that summarizes the best arguments from across the political spectrum on the news of the day. Then my take. And you know, just look up Tangle if you're interested in subscribing yourself. Again, it's free. Today's topic, Hunter Biden's pardon. On Sunday, President Joe Biden announced that he had issued a full and unconditional pardon of his son Hunter for any criminal acts between January 1st, 2014 and December 1st, 2024. The younger Biden was convicted earlier this year on felony gun charges and pleaded guilty to felony tax offenses. He was set to appear at sentencing hearings for those cases on December 12th and December 16th. The president's decision comes after repeatedly promising that he would not grant his son clemency or otherwise involve himself in his criminal cases. Refresher. The Justice Department prosecuted Hunter Biden in two separate cases. One for lying on a gun purchase form in 2018, claiming that he was not using or addicted to drugs, which is, just a side note, it's hilarious to expect someone who is addicted to drugs to not lie about it on the form. Like, if you know anything about addiction, like that's drug addiction 101. When you're under the influence of the substance you are addicted to, you lie, usually to get money or more drugs. But just like, I mean, some of the closest people to me in my life have lied to me under the influence of drugs so they continue doing drugs, right? So like, if I was able to forgive them, and believe me, it was tough. I talked about it in therapy a lot. But like, if you are able to lie to people that are the closest to you in the absolute world, your ride or dies, then like lying to the government, obviously. Again, I'm just like making a point. Like, this is a flaw in the system. Like, oh yeah. I mean, if you really want to know if people are addicted to drugs, I guess you should have to get a drug test to buy a gun, which honestly I'm fine with. And the other for a scheme to avoid paying at least $1.4 million in taxes. In 2023, Hunter's lawyers reached a deal with the Justice Department to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor tax charges and avoid prosecution on the gun charge, but the deal collapsed after a federal judge questioned its legality. In a statement on the pardon, President Biden said that Hunter had been selectively and unfairly prosecuted, which I do agree with that part, but alleging that the charges in his case came about only after several of my political opponents in Congress instigated them to attack me and oppose my election. The president added that he hoped Americans will understand why a father and a president would come to this decision. Biden reportedly decided to pardon his son after spending the weekend with his family, including Hunter in Nantucket. But also, it's like, and we talked about this, I believe, last week. Hunter Biden paid, like, he paid back the money. It's not like he's just like, yeah, like he ultimately paid the tax bill just late. It's not like he's getting out of paying that money. And a point that I believe President Biden had previously made was like, or some like left-leaning thing. Actually, maybe it was a newspaper had made the point that like normally, like, yeah, you get a slap on the wrist for not paying on time, but if you ultimately pay it, usually like they kind of like let go, because ultimately the government just wants their money, you know. And a lot of people pay their money late; they just want their money. Alleging that the charges in his cases came about only after several of my political opponents in Congress instigated them to attack me and oppose my election. The Nantucket. However, Biden and the White House had explicitly ruled out pardoning Hunter, which he did. He swore up and down he wouldn't, since the start of the Justice Department's prosecutions, with White House Press Secretary Corinne Jean-Pierre saying as recently as November 7th that the president did not plan to pardon his son in the final months of his term. And that is true. That was something that Biden and his administration have reiterated time and time again. The pardon scope is unusually broad, as presidents typically grant clemency for specific crimes rather than immunity for all criminal or potentially criminal acts taken during a period of time. And I think, in my opinion, he did that because he doesn't fucking trust this next administration, and they have it out for him so hard that if he granted him clemency on these specific crimes, they would then find some other crimes. Notably, or like stir something else up, you know? Notably, the pardon start date of January 1st, 2014 coincides with the year Hunter Biden joined the board of the Ukrainian energy company Burisma Holdings, you know, or he knows something we don't know, a position that Republicans have alleged Hunter illegally profited from. Legal experts have suggested that President Gerald Ford's pardon of President Richard Nixon in 1974 is the only comparably broad presidential pardon in modern U.S. history. Republicans quickly criticized President Biden's decision, while President-elect Trump suggested that those convicted on charges related to the January 6th riot at the Capitol should also receive pardons. Democrats, meanwhile, have been more muted in their reactions, though some have also criticized the move. Today, we'll share views from the right and the left about Biden's decision to pardon his son, then my take, what the right is saying. The right criticizes the pardon, suggesting it will be a permanent stain on Biden's legacy. As if they give a shit. Some say it was clear Biden would pardon his son as soon as it was politically expedient. Others say Hunter received favorable treatment at every stage of his criminal cases. Perhaps, but I think the counter-argument to that is that he wouldn't have been involved in those criminal cases at all if his father were not the president. In Fox News, Jonathan Turley wrote, Joe Biden's pardon of son Hunter cements his legacy as liar-in-chief. The other side calls with the sitting president a liar every single time. It's like so tiring at this point. President Biden, and also, okay, I'm just calling him a liar after having elected Donald Trump is actually crazy. President Biden's decision to use his presidential powers on Sunday to pardon his own son will be a decision that lives in infamy in presidential politics. It is not just that the president used his constitutional powers to benefit his family, Turley said. It is because the action culminates years of lying to the public about his knowledge and intentions in the influence peddling scandal surrounding his family. Even among past controversies about the use of this pardon power, Biden has cemented his legacy for many, not as the commander-in-chief, but as the liar-in-chief. The pardon power was written in absolute terms, and a president can even, in my view, pardon himself. However, what is constitutional is not necessarily ethical or right. This is one of the most disgraceful pardons, even in the checkered history of presidential pardons, Turley wrote. President Biden has lied to cover up a corruption scandal that reportedly brought his family millions in raw influence peddling. His portrayal of his son as a victim stands in sharp contrast to the sense of immunity and power conveyed by Hunter in his dealings. In the New York Post, Miranda Devine said, "We always knew Joe Biden would pardon troubled son Hunter. It is fitting that one of his final acts of this mendacious president before leaving office was to break in another promise to the American people," Devine wrote. Joe told reporters in June, after Hunter was convicted of felony gun charges in Delaware, that he definitely would not pardon his son. With a truthful president, that would be the end of it. But with the fabulous plagiarist Pinocchio currently in that job, it meant little. The same for the repeated assurances of the perennial know-nothing Corinne Jean-Pierre from the White House podium that no pardon would be forthcoming. Hunter got an unfair advantage because of his father's power. He broke laws with impunity and knew that nobody would ever stop him from doing exactly what he wanted. Every time he slipped up, his father and his minions in the FBI, Department of Justice, IRS, State Department, and CIA intervened to get him off the hook. But it's also like the Department of Justice that was like investigating. So it's not like entirely true. The person who corrupted the legal system in this country is Joe Biden. He weaponized it against his political nemesis, Donald Trump, and Trump supporters. Trump is the victim of unjust prosecution, not Hunter. But the American people understand that, as they proved on Election Day when they elected Trump in a landslide. It wasn't a landslide, but okay. In The Federalist, Jordan Boyd argued Hunter is treated differently by the deep state, but not how Joe Biden's pardon suggests. Joe's assertion that Hunter received unique treatment from the powers that be is correct, but not for the reason the president listed. Ever since Joe became vice president and then president, the bureaucracy has gone out of its way to handle Hunter and his criminality with kid gloves, Boyd wrote. Hunter allegedly failed to pay over $1.4 million in taxes and lied about illicit drug use on the federal form required for gun purchases, facts that were widely reported and well known to federal investigators. Despite public knowledge of Hunter's guns and tax crimes, however, U.S. Attorney David Weiss repeatedly delayed bringing charges against him. The FBI similarly did its best to hide and downplay a document detailing accusations that Biden fired a Ukrainian prosecutor tasked with investigating the energy company his son was a board member of in exchange for millions of dollars, Boyd said. In Hunter's pardon, Biden lamented the various investigations and prosecutions of his son as a miscarriage of justice. The true miscarriage of justice, however, came years ago when deep state departments and agencies started working overtime to shield Hunter to protect Joe's power. And I mean, listen, I don't think it's uncommon if you have a fuck up in the family that you don't spot, that you push a lot of the shit they do under the rug. I mean, isn't that why we don't hear a lot about Tiffany Trump, but we hear a ton about Ivanka? What the left is saying. The fun one? It's always the fun one. You got to push the fun one under the rug. Okay? The fun one's not good for politics. What the left is saying. The left is also critical of the pardon, with many arguing the decision is plainly hypocritical. Yeah, I mean, it is. Okay. Some defend the pardon, but say the president handled it poorly. Others worry that the move will embolden Trump in his second term. I think he was emboldened either way. I don't think he's really paying attention to what Joe Biden is doing, except for if it's like to make jokes about Joe Biden. In The Atlantic, Jonathan Chait wrote about Biden's unpardonable hypocrisy. Biden professed a willingness to abide by the results of the justice system as a matter of principle. But in breaking his promise and issuing a sweeping pardon of his son for any crimes he may have committed over an 11-year period, Biden has revealed his pledge to have been merely instrumental, Chait said. President Biden's complaint about the higher standard applied to his son reflects the perspective of myopic privilege. Crimes by family members of powerful public officials are far more damaging to public confidence than similar crimes by anonymous people. I don't disagree. I think it is extremely damaging to public confidence. But we already, like, and that's why we saw the election results that we did, which again is mind-blowing if you think that person should have your confidence. Holding them to account through strict enforcement of the law is good and correct. What the president, I mean, I would say, though, if we want to talk about like upholding the law, I would say your choices here were either that the left really leaned into all these theories that the right cheated in the election, or Biden pardoned Hunter Biden. Which would you rather have? This one is pardoning Hunter Biden is a lot lower maintenance. That's what I'll say. What the president fails to note in his self-pitying statement is that Hunter Biden for years engaged in legal but wildly inappropriate behavior by running a business based on selling the perception of access to his father. But Joe Biden's defense of, I mean, that's any kid of a famous person. Have you ever met a kid of a famous person? The most obnoxious people in the world. But Joe Biden's defense of Hunter's influence peddling by stressing its narrow legality merely serves to highlight the hypocrisy of his fatherly indulgence. The black letter of the law was a fence to protect Hunter from the consequences of his sleazy behavior. And when the law itself trapped him, he simply opened a door and walked through it, a door no average American could access. True. In Newsweek, Aaron Solomon argued pardoning Hunter Biden was the right thing done the wrong way. The pardon was an act of compassion and a practical solution to a legal case that had become hopelessly entangled in partisan politics. Yes. But while the pardon itself may have been justified, the president's repeated and unequivocal denials that he would ever consider such a move were deeply damaging, Solomon said. But maybe he really did mean that. And then maybe this weekend his wife was like, yo, Joe, please. It was obvious to anyone following the situation closely that he would eventually issue the pardon. By refusing to admit the possibility beforehand, Biden contributed to the pervasive erosion of trust in politics and politicians. I don't disagree. Hunter Biden's, I think it's bad for the Democratic Party as a whole, sure. Hunter Biden's legal troubles, while serious, were not particularly extraordinary in the grand scheme of federal prosecutions. I agree. He faced charges of failing to pay taxes on time again. And that's what's so important, right? So the right keeps reiterating the point that he failed to pay $1.4 million in taxes, which is true, but he ultimately paid it. So he didn't fail to, it's not like he's just getting away with not paying it. And again, so when the right says that, it is not untrue what they are saying. He did fail to pay $1.4 million in taxes, but they're leaving out the ellipses where the very important part where it says on time. So the government ultimately got its money, which is the main thing here. He wasn't alleviated of paying $1.4 million. That would be insane. He paid it just late. And when people were like, yo, you got to pay this. But lots of people in America are like, the government's like, yo, you got to pay this. And then they're like, oh, we thought you wouldn't know, what the fuck? And illegally owning a firearm while struggling with addiction. Again, I mean, the fact that we're asking addicts to fill out forms for guns accurately is silly. While these offenses are not trivial, they hardly make him the criminal mastermind Republicans have portrayed him to be, Solomon wrote. And yet Biden's handling of the matter was far from perfect. Biden's repeated denials did not shield him from criticism. They only made his eventual decision appear calculated and cynical. Had he been upfront, acknowledging the extraordinary circumstances of his son's case and the difficult choices it posed, he might have turned the pardon into a moment of candor and humanity. In the Boston Globe, James Pindell said Biden's pardon of his son is not only him at his Trumpiest, but also emboldens Trump's next term. While Biden campaigned on removing Trump, I disagree with that so hard. I think Trump is going to get into office and very quickly forget anything that Joe Biden did. while Biden campaigned and just like be in his own little world. While Biden campaigned on removing Trumpism, restoring dignity and decency to the White House, and pledging to restore the soul of the nation, he appeared to abandon those ideals over Thanksgiving dinner, Pindell wrote. Within hours, Good for Joe was trending from his supporters on X, the site formerly known as Twitter. Never mind, this marked a stark reversal from Biden's repeated position that, unlike Trump, he would respect the courts and the rule of law, vowing never to pardon Hunter despite his love for him. Biden is not the first sitting president to pardon a family member. Bill Clinton pardoned his half-brother, Roger Clinton, for drug charges. And let's not forget Trump's pardon of Charles Kushner, his son-in-law's father, whom he nominated to be the next ambassador to France, Pindell said. Though Biden initially sought to demonstrate his administration's commitment to higher standards, his latest move only further emboldens a next Trump administration, which will no doubt repeatedly point to the pardon, further weakening the norms of American politics. And one thing I do wonder is I don't think this would have, I'm not sure this would have happened if Kamala was elected, you know? But I think when Trump was elected, he was like, fuck it, you know? Who the fuck cares? My take, and when I say my take, I mean Isaac Saul's take, not my take. I'll do my take after Isaac Saul's. And a reminder, my take is a section where Isaac Saul gives himself space to share his own personal opinion. After insisting he would not do this, President Biden pardoning Hunter genuinely surprised me. It surprised me, too. I understand that Biden would want to protect his own son from prosecution under the Trump administration. More than anything, though, I find this decision to be hypocritical, damaging, and dangerous. Before I say anything, I need to own the fact that I did not expect Biden to do this. In a June edition of Tangle, I wrote that if Hunter Biden got convicted, I have a hard time imagining him going to jail as part of his sentence, and I also think it is incredibly unlikely and would be very unwise for President Biden to get involved in any way, like by trying to pardon him. After Biden dropped out, I wondered aloud if he might pardon Hunter, but I personally did not expect him to. I have long maintained that political prognostication is a fool's errand because when you inevitably get something wrong, it turns into a blunt object people use to bludgeon you. Nevertheless, I also think making predictions is a good way to show and test your understanding of the world we live in, and I'm proud to say that when I've written about future events, I'm right far more often than I'm wrong, but I was very wrong about this, so you can take my analysis from here with that grain of salt. Generally speaking, I believed Biden would not pardon Hunter if he was convicted for 3 reasons. Number one, the Department of Justice could have likely sought a punishment without prison, so a pardon might not have been necessary. 2, Biden would not want to do something that would help Trump politically and give him more of an excuse for any questionable actions going forward, which pardoning his son very obviously does. I disagree. I don't think Biden gives a fuck moving forward. Number 3, he said he would not pardon him publicly over and over, to the point that going back on his word would critically tarnish his legacy. And of course, when President Biden was also candidate Biden, the optics of this decision were even less conceivable. Apparently, none of that really mattered. While I think pardoning Hunter is a terrible decision, here's what I think is the strongest argument possible for it. This case did seem to be driven by politics. The Justice Department spent significantly more resources prosecuting this case than they would have for an average defendant. Lying on a form to buy a gun is a common low-level crime. And I didn't even need to read this article to know that, because just using your critical thinking and saying, wow, part of a gun form is you have to check yes or no, I'm addicted to drugs. Yeah, you just say, who would say yes? Who would say yes? The drugs are really good if you're saying yes. You're on psychedelics if you're saying yes, you know? Lying on a form to buy a gun is a common low-level crime, but Hunter took a reasonable plea deal, which collapsed for that crime. Tax evasion is worse, but Hunter pleaded guilty to that crime and paid back what he owed, plus penalties. These offenses are not deserving of this kind of attention by the DOJ, unless the department was using the case to prove something. This is like when the judge sent Paris Hilton to jail. Like that, the president's son should be punished for profiting off of his father's time in the White House, but Hunter was not on trial for that. Throughout it all, President Biden stayed out of the process, seemingly trying to respect norms and avoid influencing the case. His political reward, getting forced out of his nomination and then watching the norm-breaking Trump win re-election. And I think that's the most important sentence in this piece. Trump, of course, is the same guy who pardoned Charles Kushner, Steve Bannon, Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, and Michael Flynn, and who has suggested he would pardon some of the January 6 rioters once he's back in office, which I'm sure will happen. Imagine being in President Biden's position, watching Trump pardon his allies at the end of his term, promise revenge in his next term, and appoint people like Kash Patel to the FBI. If you had the opportunity to protect your son from spending the rest of his life living in fear of political prosecution, what would you do? This, interestingly, seems to be the argument that resonates most with the critics on the right. It's his son. What would you do? Exactly. The fucking party of family. You pardon your son. I don't need to be a Republican. Just being from New Jersey, just being a loyal person, especially for these crimes that did not. I'll get into it in a second, but like he didn't hurt anyone else except for him, and they didn't even hurt him. If I were making the case for pardoning him, that's how I'd make it. But I'm not making that case because I think this pardon is an overt abuse of presidential power, introduces a dangerous new precedent, and raises a lot of alarming questions. However, you want to cut it. A lame duck president just issued a sweeping pardon for his son to protect him from being prosecuted for any and all federal crimes over a decade-long period. Pardon power is not new, but this is as extreme a use of it as we've ever seen. It is a straightforward abuse of the presidential pardon power. There is no way around it. I understand Biden wants to preempt a more aggressive prosecution from the incoming Trump administration, but that's another reason why I wonder if he would done this if Kamala had won. I feel like he wouldn't have felt like it was necessary, But Biden's Justice Department could have prevented the need to pardon Hunter for gun crimes if it hadn't pursued a plea deal, so head-scratching it was thrown out. But then again, Biden didn't just pardon Hunter for his tax and gun crimes. He pardoned him for any and all federal crimes for a decade-long period, an astonishing and sweeping protection. That raises some serious questions. Why didn't President Biden issue a more specific pardon? I have questions about that for sure. Is there more he could be trying to protect him from, given all the smoke around Hunter's business dealings from that time period? But I also think that, yes, I agree. This means he could have done something else really bad that Joe Biden knows about that we don't, 100%. But on the flip side, I also think it means that because the right is so obsessed with Hunter Biden, that this could mean like if he pardoned them from these two specific crimes, they would then vindictively go searching for other crimes during that period. Even the defense that plucks at my heartstrings that Biden is acting as a loving father protecting his addict son who went through a dark period in his life and has now found sobriety and stability is not sufficient. When you are president, the country's best interests should supersede your own and your family's. Very democratic point of view. That's the deal you are making. And the end, I would argue, part of the downfall of the Democratic Party. That's the deal you are making. It's the duty of the office, the higher calling. Even in a world, the left is obsessed with a higher calling to our own detriment. Even in a world where Trump gives his children's in-laws pardons and high-level positions, this pardon goes a step further, setting the precedent that the president can give his family members blanket immunity if he just claims political persecution. I have no doubt that future presidents, including Trump, will use Biden's decision as an excuse to redefine what is acceptable and defensible. I don't think Trump needed an excuse. I think he's just going to do what he wants to do. And all of this is to say nothing of the fact that President Biden repeatedly promised the American public he would not do the very thing he just did. Countless anchors from across the corporate media insisted any suggestion he was going to pardon Hunter was false and mocked those who said he would as incapable of imagining a principled, honorable person. Again, it's that left better than you mentality that we shoot ourselves in the foot with every time because we set it up, so that if we do anything bad, we're held to higher standards that we created ourselves. If Biden were going to do this all along, He could have hedged his bets. He could have called out the prosecution for tanking a fair plea deal when it happened. He could have issued a statement saying he was doing this to protect Hunter from Trump. He could have said he would not issue a pardon so long as the case was handled fairly. He could have even issued a narrow pardon for the tax and gun crimes. He didn't do any of that. Instead, he blatantly violated his own word, issued a sweeping pardon that raises alarming questions about other potential crimes, and opened a new door of abusive presidential power that we all now have to live with while he walks off into the sunset, or the white light. And let's be honest, it's a disappointing and frankly embarrassing way to end his presidency. I mean, we've jumped the shark. Like, what are you talking about? Embarrassing end? When you're bullied out of your own role in the government, I think you've already been embarrassed. And again, I will reiterate, at that point, you just say, fuck it. So my take is, listen, if I was President Biden, I would say, fuck all y'all. 100%, no question. I would say, fuck all y'all. I think I give him so much credit for acting with the grace that he did during Kamala's campaign after being mocked by the right and the left, the party that claims to hate bullying. We ran this man's name through the dirt. So now I say he can do whatever the fuck he wants. It is such a liberal vibe to not pardon your friends and family because it's not following the rules. Like, this is when I talk about a liberal will not help you move and a Republican will, this is exactly what I mean. You pardon your ride or dies. You always pardon your ride or dies, especially when the crime the person committed he didn't kill anyone. Who cares? Who cares? I am so sick of hearing about Hunter Biden when actual important things in this country need to be tended to. Hunter Biden, in my opinion, is Joe Biden's Monica Lewinsky. It's a distraction that has gotten way more attention than necessary, and I'm sick of it. The circus is already on its way to town, and I'm glad Joe could get some popcorn and enjoy part of it. Good for you indeed, Joe. When they go low, we go high can be tended to by a younger person in a future administration. Because at this point, as far as Joe Biden is concerned, fuck it all to hell, okay? Stop making things up, guys. Joe Biden wasn't going to be a revered president one way or the other. So he might as well help his goddamn son. All right? That's my thought. All right, let's move into other stories. We have a could be worse this week. This is coming out of South Korea. Regarding martial law. I saw this, and then also WACO Julie recommended we cover this. As a reminder, martial law is the replacement of civilian government by military rule and the suspension of civilian legal processes for military powers. Martial law can continue for a specified amount of time or indefinitely, and standard civil liberties may be suspended for as long as martial law continues. Really serious stuff. Most often, martial law is declared in times of war and or emergencies such as civil unrest and natural disasters. Alternatively, martial law may be declared in instances of military coup d'etat. And this is from the Washington Post. South Korean president faces impeachment calls after martial law attempt. So this is out of Seoul. Opposition lawmakers are pushing to impeach President Yoon Suk Yeol, who triggered South Korea's biggest political crisis in decades late Tuesday night when he abruptly declared martial law, only to backtrack 6 hours later in the face of protests and parliamentary veto. Members of the country's largest labor unions added to the calls for Yoon to leave office, protesting in central Seoul on Wednesday morning and threatening to strike until he resigns. Power to the people. Yoon's decision took the United States by surprise, with Biden administration officials saying they did not know of the move in advance, but they reaffirmed the strength of U.S.-South Korea alliance. The United States has almost 30,000 soldiers stationed in South Korea. So it's a very quick could be worse. And then Corinne Fisher's party topic of the week, ladies and gentlemen. This is a new update in something that we've been covering a lot on this show over the course of the past year or two, and that is assisted dying, assisted suicide. It was just voted to make it legal in the UK. And this is from the New York Times, babies, okay? British lawmakers vote, and whenever you want to put that for me to sing, and you let me know, Mike. There was a call on the Patreon to have me have access to these things myself so people wouldn't have to wait for the drop. So if we're talking about coup d'etat, I think there's a coup d'etat going against you in the Patreon. It was a petition to let me have access to Corinne Fisher's Party of the Week drop in Cutie's Corner and Enemy of the State because they said you weren't doing it fast enough.
I mean, you have your board there. I can add it to that, but
it's my party and I'll cry if I want to, cry if I want to, cry if I want to. You would cry too if it happened to you. Boo-doo, boop, boop, boop. That's my favorite part, the boo-doo, boop, boop, boop. All right, again, this is from the New York Times. British lawmakers vote to legalize assisted dying in landmark decision. And I wanted to kind of cover what's happening with this in other countries because I think it is something that will ultimately come to the United States, albeit it feels pretty liberal, so I don't think soon. But it'll come eventually. I know it's already like kind of, but it's in the way that it's coming about in other countries, right? So after an emotional debate, Parliament voted on Friday in favor of allowing assisted suicide for some terminally ill people. God, it's so funny. I was looking up the 100% like legality of assisted suicide in the United States. So, how much is it allowed right now? We're good in physician-assisted suicide or medical aid in dying is legal right now in 11 U.S. jurisdictions, okay? California, Colorado, District of Columbia, Hawaii, Montana, Maine, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, Vermont, and Washington. These laws, excluding Montana, where there is no explicit legislation, state that actions taken in accordance with the act shall not for any purpose constitute suicide, assisted suicide, mercy killing, or homicide under the law. This distinguishes the legal act of medical aid in dying from the act of helping someone die by suicide, which is prohibited by statute in 42 states and prohibited by common law in an additional 6 states and the District of Columbia. A 2018 poll by Gallup displayed that a majority of Americans, with 72% in favor, support laws allowing patients to seek the assistance of a physician in ending their life. Nevertheless, assisted suicide remains illegal in a majority of states across the nation. So just to catch us up there. After an emotional debate, Parliament voted on Friday in favor of allowing assisted suicide for some terminally ill people in England and Wales. After an emotive and at times impassioned debate, Britain's lawmakers on Friday voted to allow assisted dying for terminally ill patients in England and Wales under strict conditions, opening the way to one of the most profound social changes in the country in decades. By 330 votes to 275, members of Parliament gave their support to a bill that would permit doctors to help some terminally ill patients to end their lives. Friday's vote was not the final say on the matter for Parliament, as it will now be scrutinized in parliamentary committees and amendments to the bill may be put forward, but it is a landmark political moment, setting the stage for a significant shift that some have likened to Britain's legalization of abortion in 1967 and the abolition of the death penalty in 1969. Which, I mean, God. The fact that they abolished the death penalty in 1969 and we still do it here in the U.S. is like, Lord Almighty. If the British can do it, you can do it. America. The new legislation would apply to a narrow group. Applicants would have to be over 18, diagnosed with a terminal illness, and have been given no more than 6 months to live. 2 doctors and a judge will be required to give their approval, and the fatal drugs would have to be self-administered. And I like that part because I do, we've covered on this show people who have to administer the death penalty in the U.S. and the mental effects that has on them. And so I think that self-administration for these type of drugs, I like that a lot. Assisted dying, but then you're like, okay, well, what if you're terminally ill and you can't use your hands? I guess you have to use when they say, has to be self-administered, I'm sure friends and family can help. Assisted dying is already legal in a handful of European countries, as well as in Canada, New Zealand, 10 U.S. states, and the District of Columbia. The bill debated on Friday was proposed by a Labour Party member of Parliament, Kim Leadbetter, but lawmakers were given the freedom to vote with their consciences instead of being expected to vote along a party line, meaning the outcome was impossible to predict. Let's see. I'm going to skip forward a little bit. Proponents of dying, assisted dying, say it is a merciful way to curtail unbearable suffering in the final moments of life. Under current British law, those who help relatives or friends to end their lives face police questioning and potentially prosecution. So even terminally ill patients who decide to end their life in a country with more permissive rules like Switzerland must do so alone to protect their families. Okay, so it's but again, if you're terminally ill, a lot of times, are you able to do that yourself? Everyone wouldn't. But I guess they're saying no, but if you have the wherewithal mentally, that doesn't necessarily mean you have the wherewithal physically. Okay, anyway. That condones some to a terrible death, some proponents of the bill argued. Let's see. Peter Prinsley, a Labour lawmaker and surgeon, rejected claims by opponents of the bill that its scope would later be extended to include a wider category of people. This is not some slippery slope, he said. We are shortening death, not life, for our patients. This is not life or death. This is death or death. Critics view assisted dying as a threat to the old, disabled, and those with complex medical conditions, any of whom might feel pressured into agreeing to a premature death. Some lawmakers said they feared that some of those patients might end their lives prematurely to remove the physical or financial burden on their families. Yeah, they might, but that's their choice, is it not? People often recognize coercion only after years have passed, yet within a month, someone could be dead, said Rachel Maskell, a Labour lawmaker who worked as a senior physiotherapist in acute medical care. Malign coercion cases may be few, but as a clinician working at the fringes of life, I heard my patients frequently say, I don't want to be a burden, or I'd rather the money went to the grandchildren than on my care. Yeah, so it goes on and on, but those are the basic arguments, and I think that's just very, very interesting what is happening in other countries. Moving on to Girl. You may have read earlier today, Trump has some more picks. He picked Billy Long to head the IRS and Kelly Loeffler to lead the Small Business Administration. Those are his latest nominations. We'll get into a couple more in detail in just a moment, but before that, this story only broke today, so again, to me, in my opinion, it's obviously a contract killing, but because I watched the footage of the guy actually being shot. Did you, Michael?
You know the answer to that.
Sometimes you don't. Okay, but you saw it. And I mean, that's obviously a contract killing, right? For the United Healthcare CEO.
I don't know. I mean, the fact that the guy's gun jammed that many times, that doesn't feel like a professional job.
But it was just so direct. It jammed multiple times. That looked pretty quick. Maybe I only saw footage that was the successful shot. I didn't see it, or maybe I just don't know how a gun works properly.
That makes sense.
It seemed very fast.
Yeah, it was very fast. There's no doubt about that. But yeah. Yeah, just like if you watch him, right? Like he shoots the shot, then you see him fiddling with the thing, and then shoots it again, then fiddles with it again, shoots again. I've seen people online.
How many bullets actually entered the guy, though?
I believe it was 3.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
see what you're saying.
So he had to keep like messing with the hammer and pulling it back, and all that stuff to me screams like this is not a quote unquote professional. You know,
It just looked very like smooth, and the person was like very calm. I don't know. It just felt like, But then again, you don't have to be a professional to assassinate someone. It's not like John Wilkes Booth was a professional assassin.
no.
All right. So this is from Associated Press. United Healthcare CEO kept a low public profile. Then he was shot to death in New York. Brian Thompson led one of the biggest health insurers in the U.S. And also, where was this? Manhattan Hotel. Is this like Midtown, or where was this?
Yeah, it was like right below Central Park.
Oh, so a little higher up. Okay. Yeah, I was like, the streets look too clean to be in Midtown. It's a little higher. Brian Thompson led one of the biggest health insurers in the U.S., but was unknown to millions of people his decisions affected. Then Wednesday's targeted fatal shooting of the United Healthcare CEO on a Midtown Manhattan sidewalk thrust the executive and his business into the national spotlight. Thompson, who was 50, had worked at the giant United Health Group for 20 years and run the insurance arm since 2021 after running its Medicare and retirement business. As CEO, Thompson led a firm that provides health coverage to more than 49 million Americans, more than the population of Spain. United is the largest provider of Medicare Advantage plans, the privately run versions of the U.S. government's Medicare program for people age 65 and older. I also will say there was something a little bit guerrilla about the guy's backpack that felt a little bit less like contract killer and a little bit more like those people who like guerrilla style free animals from animal testing.
I sent you it might have been a meme, but somebody broke down the shooter's fit.
Okay.
And
I guess I didn't see that one. Is it the last thing you sent me on Twitter?
Yeah, X. But.
Yeah, Twitter. Mm-hmm. You sick fuck.
You're the one who always does that. Steal his look. Prometheus design hoodies. I got it on the screen here. Prometheus design hoodies, $400. Peak design everyday 30-liter bag, $299.99. A 9mm suppressor, which goes for about $850, and Hermes calfskin sneakers.
How obnoxious! Because obviously, this killing we would assume is financially related, and how obnoxious to be running to be doing it in Hermes. What, you think it's like about death or like someone denies? I feel like in a privatized healthcare, it has to somehow go back to something financial, whether it was someone denied, whether he's trying to make a larger political statement about America.
Well, look,
it's Hermes calfskin sneaker. I can't think of a more fucking obnoxious shoe to be wearing.
Like I said, this is probably a meme. It might not be true. It's hard to see on this grainy footage if those are actually Hermes sneakers or not. But
yeah,
at the end of the day, like I was reading.
It was hipster. I mean, like, there were, no, not even hipster. There was something. I agree. There, that's what, like I was saying. Like I pointed out because there was something like alternate government about it, like anarchist, like I know what's best for the country kind of thing. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, like urban warrior gear.
Yes. Love.
So I was reading a thing earlier today where, the people who, or the insurance company that denied the most people, it was United Health, was far, like 46% of claims came in. They shut them down.
Right.
People were...
And we should be furious about that. Yeah.
People were posting in the comments, like from the New York Times reported on this. The comments were all like, hey, are you sure this was an emergency? My husband's heart attack was deemed not an emergency by, United Health. So
that's
just
crazy.
making sure. Right. And it's like... Apparently the guy's wife has come out and been like, this is horrible, the stuff that I'm reading about my husband, like people making jokes about him after he was slain in broad daylight. And it's
I agree, but when you are the head of a privatized healthcare company, people are gonna this man didn't directly kill anyone, but he indirectly killed many people. He indirectly is a mass murderer. No questions asked.
I was also hearing reports that there was talks of a merger at the meeting that he was heading into. So,
between who?
I don't know.
Oh,
but they were. I mean, they're a $900 billion healthcare provider, one of the biggest in the field. So, I'm sure mergers and acquisitions are it's a Wednesday for somebody like that.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Sorry, I was just. I that reminded me that someone in the pre-show also said something about Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield just announced that they're going to cap anesthesia coverage.
Ooh, yeah, I saw that.
At certain time limits for CT patients. Wait, what does CT stand for?
I don't know, but
CT.
it's if you're going in for surgery. There's an allotted amount of time you are going to be given anesthesia for that surgery. If the surgery goes long, they're not paying for the extra anesthesia.
Oh, sorry, CT. They just mean Connecticut. I was looking for a medical. I thought it was a medical thing. I'm like, oh, they just mean Connecticut. Oh, interesting. Okay. But I don't know. I don't know if it's only Connecticut specific. It doesn't look to be. I think I just pulled up something that was Connecticut specific. Yeah, this looks like it might be for other states too, because obviously, why would it only do it for Connecticut if it's Blue Cross Blue Shield trying to save money? That's very interesting. Okay.
So, I mean, I could see somebody whose, family was denied coverage because of this thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was a known thing that this guy was going to be at a shareholders meeting or whatever kind of meeting they were heading to. And the guy was parked up there for apparently 5 minutes before this dude showed up. So, he was certainly waiting for him. That was his intended target, obviously.
Right.
This was not a random act of violence.
No.
So I would like to, that looked like something out of like a Hitman video game.
Right. Yeah. That's why I was like, when I watched it, I was like, that was smooth.
Somebody pointed out it happened at I think it was either 6:47 or 8:47 a.m. And they were like, dude, Agent 47, you can't put your name in the time. You're giving it away.
Oh my God. The company also sells individual insurance and administers health insurance coverage for thousands of employers and state federally funded Medicaid programs. The business run by Thompson brought in $281 billion in revenue last year, making it the largest subsidiary of the Minnetonka, Minnesota-based United Health Group. His $10.2 million annual pay package, including salary bonus and stock option awards, made him one of the company's highest paid executives. I mean, okay. The University of Iowa graduate began his career as a certified public accountant at PwC and had little name recognition beyond the healthcare industry. Even to investors who own its stock, the parent company's face belonged to CEO Andrew Whitty, a knighted British triathlete who has testified before Congress. When Thompson did occasionally draw attention, it was because of his role in shaping the way Americans get healthcare. At an investor meeting last year, he outlined his company's shift to value-based care, paying doctors and other caregivers to keep patients healthy rather than focusing on treating them once sick. I mean, I'm still stunned by that pay package. The annual $10.2 million annually. That's fucking crazy. That's criminal.
You should see what the guy who runs the NFL makes.
Yeah, but I mean, that's we're not paying for that.
Huh?
Like people aren't dying because that money could have saved people's lives. The NFL doesn't have anything to do with people dying.
I get what you're saying.
That's like a choice that we've made in America, and like a different interesting conversation about how much celebrities and athletes and all these people are paid. But that we love that. That's American culture to me. Again, another issue because they have to sell us stuff, At an investor meeting last year, he outlined his company's shift to value-based care, paying doctors and other caregivers to keep patients healthy rather than focusing on treating them once sick. that's good. Healthcare should be easier for people, Thompson said at the time. We are cognizant of the challenges, but navigating a future through value-based care unlocks a situation where the family doesn't have to make the decisions on their own. Thompson also drew attention in 2021 when the insurer, like its competitors, was widely criticized for a plan to start denying payment for what it deemed non-critical visits to the hospital emergency rooms. Patients are not medical experts and should not be expected to self-diagnose during what they believe is a medical emergency, the chief executive of the American Hospital Association wrote in an open letter addressed to Thompson. Threatening patients with a financial penalty for making the wrong decision could have a chilling effect on seeking emergency care. And you can see it in Michael Moore's documentary, Sicko. Oh my God, these pop-up ads are making me sick. Let's see. United Healthcare responded by delaying rollout of the change. Thompson, who lived in a Minneapolis suburb and was the married father of 2 sons in high school, was set to speak at an investor meeting in a Midtown New York hotel. He was on his own and about to enter the building when he was shot in the back by a masked assailant who fled on foot before pedaling an e-bike into Central Park a few blocks away, the New York Police Department said. Great place to hide. Chief of Detectives Joseph Kenny, hide in plain sight, said investigators were looking at Thompson's social media accounts and interviewing employees and family members. Didn't seem like he had any issues at all, Kenny said. He did not have a security detail. Apparently, you know, if you're in charge of making decisions that kill a lot of people, similar to the president, it seems like you should have a security detail, should you not? All right. Moving on to some more girl. Cash Patel.
Hold on. Sorry, real quick.
Yeah.
2 things. One, we did get 1 super chat in. Sammy was following up on the Hunter Biden thing. He asked why it went back to 2014. Why is that ignored?
It's not ignored, Sammy. It's absolutely not ignored, and that does raise a lot of questions about what does perhaps Joe Biden know that we don't know, for sure.
Yeah. And then on the line, we have somebody calling in, Matt from Canada, calling in about assisted suicide.
Oh, Matt from Canada. Okay, hello.
Matt, you are on the line. Can you hear us?
Hello, am I live?
Yes, you are. You're on Without a Country, Matt. How can we help you? He assisted suicide.
Free to interrupt me at any time.
Okay.
Just to start with, because I want to push back and take the opposite side of the assisted dying argument, but I want you to know that when I was 16 years old, I was a big fan of Jason Ellis, and I would listen to him on Sirius XM, and then I saw you on his you and Christina, I saw on his podcast.
Yeah, we love Jason.
Yeah, and I thought you guys were brilliant. I thought you guys were great.
I wouldn't say brilliant. I'll interrupt you right there. I wouldn't say brilliant, but thank you.
Well, Jason usually has not the most emotionally intelligent guest on. So it was really cool to see you guys get into his sexuality and experiences.
Yeah, interesting story.
Yeah. So I went from listening to your guys we effed to now I'm more of a WACO listener.
Thanks.
So assisted dying, as they call it in Canada, assisted suicide, as it might better be called.
Uh-huh.
I think it's one thing you read one thing in the article you were reading that the New York Times that pointed out is that the bill in England is the reasonably foreseeable death in 3 months. Here in Canada, our version of this started off with reasonably foreseeable death in 1 month.
Uh-huh.
And then it was reasonably foreseeable death in 3 months.
Uh-huh.
And then it was 6 months. And then it was 1 year. And then there was a case of a severely disabled woman who I believe was Native, but I'm not 100% sure on that, who they said, well, in 10 years she'll probably die. And then she was cleared for it. I know it's a slippery slope argument, but we have seen the slope slip here in Canada by a lot. and there is a disturbingly intersectional angle where a lot, like, I don't know the exact statistics, but I know it is an overrepresentative proportion of the people who get made are indigenous women from like lower income brackets.
In Canada specifically?
Yes. I can't speak to other places because I'm less familiar.
And there
But
would
in
also
Canada-
be like places where, you know, like Switzerland and stuff, where there just might not be the number of indigenous people.
Right.
Let me see. Yeah, I mean, when you type that in on Google, I mean, there's an article from The Guardian that comes up from 2022. This one says that are they being driven to assisted suicide by a poverty or healthcare crisis? I'm trying to find something about more like that's like ethnically based.
Yeah, I might have to. Might be able to pull something for you after, or you can. Of course, you're welcome to keep looking for yourself as well. But even in like Switzerland and stuff like that, where I know that they do also have it.
Yeah,
I would, and again, we'd have to pull something up. We could go through the numbers together and stuff. I would be willing to bet that it's obviously just because there's more people from a lower income bracket, but it is going to be mostly people from a lower income bracket getting funneled into assisted or qualifying for assisted dying. I'll try and put it as neutrally as possible, right?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, like, because there was also like, you know, there was a story like Free Press did about a woman with just like very severe depression, I believe is what we went over. And she was like, I mean, really young, like in her 20s or something. And she was cleared for it. And then there was the malfunction with the, like, you know, in quotes, suicide pod that we covered a couple weeks ago, where, you know, only the owner of the company was around, and it like really messed up. And there's a lot of questions there. So yeah, certainly problems with it. I mean, I haven't thought long term about it. I mean, you know, I'm kind of just like, do whatever you want, but you know, certainly when you're talking about people who are like physically incapable of administering stuff themselves, like it could be questionable, and the poverty thing is very sus.
Yeah, and I would just also like say too that like I think maybe like I think people from a higher income background, when they choose to use assisted suicide, I think it's a lot closer to what we think the best case scenario of it would be, right? Where,
Sure.
you know, they've done a cost benefit analysis of the pain that they would be in trying to fight the position that they're in versus, you know, a controlled demolition. And, you know, they've decided that what's best for them is, you know, to go ahead and just go through with assisted suicide. But I think a lot of people that end up in these programs are basically being told, like, you know, look, you don't have the money to fight this anyway. Like, you don't have the money. Your family's going to have to pay for you. Someone's going to have to pay for you. Certainly in countries like Canada and Switzerland, where we have national health services, they're being told that the taxpayer doesn't want to pay for you. You know, like, we're asking the most vulnerable among us to do society a solid so we can save. I believe in Canada, we currently, by government numbers, estimate that we save only $140 million a year, which is a drop in the bucket for our health system.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, in our country, it would literally be like, it would be more understandable because you would be saving your immediate family the money in many circumstances because of our privatized healthcare system, which is like,
Sure.
I actually,
It's noble.
It's not even like, it's just like this is the repercussions of living in a capitalist society. And I think some people, they're like, well, if I'm going to die in the next few years anyway, might as well save my family, $1 million or whatever it is. And I think some people truly would want to make that decision depending on what their role, if they're the parent or grandparent in the family. And it's a decision one would hope never to have to make. But, at a certain point, it depends like what your quality of life is. Like I can, definitely see like making that decision for my family and being like, yeah, my quality of life sucks anyway. Like might as well give them some money back. But that's a personal decision, of course.
For sure. And I wouldn't begrudge anyone who made that decision. I would just say that I would like to see us as a society, as society, but certainly not. I don't want the state to make that decision, but that's like a separate issue.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but I would like to see us try to like not put people in that position in the first place. Like again, I wouldn't begrudge anyone for making that choice.
Yeah,
but I think that is like we've failed so many steps along the way for someone to get there.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I when we have talked about this in the past, I was thinking it more along the lines of like you're chronically ill, you're, whether that be chronically mentally ill or chronically physically ill, and you're just like, I don't want to do this anymore. More like that. But obviously, there are so many more nuances to the conversation.
Yeah, and I know again, if you wanted, I could, you can like, I follow you on Twitter, so if you wanted, you could like DM me and I can get you some resources. But in
just
Canada,
send it to withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. I would love to read about the racism in it. I think that would be very interesting, or the sexism. I mean, yeah, you could totally see like some husband not wanting to deal with his sick wife and sending her to get slain. I can 100% see that.
And there's also, I don't know if it's just particularly bad here. I would assume not, because but I just don't know enough about Switzerland, right? So like I don't want to just like talk down on them, but like, yeah. Like, but the big thing here that's been coming out more and more recently is like the amount of coercion that people are under to take.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and the people who have been in the hospitals recording conversations with their healthcare providers, being pressured to make appointments, to see if they qualify, being pressured to take assessments, being pressured to participate in studies. So, yeah, like I think in the States, probably you wouldn't get as much of that because, again, here, like there's a financial incentive on part of the health system.
I was going to say, this is one of the pros of having privatized healthcare is that I don't think this kind of coercion would happen because it would not be, it wouldn't affect the government either way.
Right. Yeah. It would probably be less in the States.
Yeah.
I think there still would be a level of it, like from the personal, like family finances, like we were talking about, and then also like from like your insurance provider would probably pressure you because it's going to be cheaper for them.
We don't take we don't take insurance. We don't care about it. No one is going to be coerced by their insurance provider. We don't take them seriously here. Everyone universally hates them. That's something that's a bipartisan issue in the States.
Yeah, but you could face the possibility in that scenario, hey, we have decided that we're no longer going to cover you if
terminate.
You don't accept this is the only option. So they would essentially be twisting your arm into it.
Yes, I think that would be a pretty wild thing to see happen here. I don't put it past insurance companies at all, though. But anyway, thank you so much for calling regarding this. And please send me any additional articles to withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. Appreciate you calling. Okay, so moving on now to Kash Patel. As a reminder, so this is who Donald Trump wants to head the FBI. Kash Patel, he's the guy who wrote that children's book that we talked about several weeks ago, The Plot Against the King. where Donald Trump is like the king. It's about Russiagate, and it's a story that's basically like anti-Hillary Clinton, and it's a children's book about Hillary's horrible plot against Trump that you can share with the whole family. So just a reminder, that's who that guy is. That's so funny to me. And then this is from the New Republic, which heads up is very left-leaning. About Kash Patel. What is this? One of those things that? I got it. I think this is like one of those websites that continually updates, and that is wildly unhelpful when you're doing a show like this, because I wanted an article about Kash Patel, and now it is not here. It is not here. Wait, let me look at this. Sorry, I have to pull something up. Kash Patel. Sorry, bear with me, everybody. Oh, here it is. Okay. Trump's pick for FBI director already has an enemies list from the New Republic. This is what I wanted to say. It said, and it's long, very long. Donald Trump's choice to run the FBI, Kash Patel, has already put together a list of deep state officials whom he thinks need to be targeted. In his 2023 book, Government Gangsters, Patel calls out a long list of villains, which he calls members of the executive branch deep state, in an appendix. These villains are not restricted to Democrats or even Biden administration officials, and in fact includes several Republicans as well as Trump appointees like Bill Barr, Rod Rosenstein, Pat Cipollone, Patrick Philbin, and Special Counselor Robert Hur. Not surprisingly, Patel also includes FBI Director Christopher Wray, whom Trump wants to replace, as well as Democrats ranging from White House advisor John Podesta to Vice President Kamala Harris. It seems to back up assertions that the choice of Patel is part of clear authoritarian takeover, in the words of The Atlantic's Tom Nichols. An FBI director having an enemies list undermines the law enforcement purpose of the position, but is exactly what Trump is looking for, since he has repeatedly stated his desire to take revenge for the grievances of his first term. Trump's team, however, is already souring on Patel, maybe because they don't want to end up in the enemies list of his next book. If Trump goes ahead with nominating Patel, this latest revelation will not help him his confirmation hearings, especially considering that Republicans and Democrats support Wray staying on. FBI directors are supposed to serve a single 10-year term, but Patel's appointment would make him the third FBI director in 7 years, thanks to Trump, who fired James Comey in 2017 after only 4 years in the post. Patel's job at the FBI will basically be to act as Trump's hatchet man and upend the rule of law. The underqualified MAGA loyalist has only 3 years working in the Department of Justice as his law enforcement experience, and is likely to butt heads with more experienced law enforcement officers. If Patel gets past the Senate, will he face resistance or cooperation from the rank and file FBI? I just thought that was very funny to just have a list of enemies. I mean, I don't hate it personally. I mean, I hate it for the government, but it's funny personally to have a list of enemies. And then regarding Trump's pick for the head of the Office of Management and Budget, this is from The Hill, which is right-leaning. Trump is interested in appointing Russell Vought. It says Russell Vought is just the man to implement Trump's autocratic vision. Is that the proper way to pronounce his last name, Mike? Do you know? Have you ever heard it said out loud? Vought? It feels like it. I don't know how else you would say it. With everyone I know giving thanks for the blessing that former Representative Matt Gaetz won't be the next Attorney General, most have lost sight of Russell Vought, whom Trump will nominate to be the next head of the Office of Management and Budget. Trump has hit the jackpot in his quest to destroy the American government. He has chosen a Secretary of Defense without experience, who allegedly, oh my God, these pop-ups. Why? One second, guys. Sorry, a Walmart ad popped up in the middle of me reading this without me touching anything. Let's see. Who allegedly bought off a rape charge and wants to remove women from combat roles. And fire all the woke generals, a director of national intelligence who is a security risk, a secretary of health and human services who is anti-science, and a director of OMB who wants to fire 50,000 federal employees. No wonder many in the Kremlin are jubilant that a Trump presidency might bring about the collapse of the American state. Even conservative senators should find Vought problematic. Senators are wary of presidential appointees who hold views outside the spectrum of the political mainstream, and Vought fits the definition neatly. He believes that our 230-year-old system of checks and balances must be abrogated with all power going to the president. For example, he has written himself down as wanting to bypass the Senate in making presidential appointments. And again, what is the consistent theme we see about all these appointees? They're all Trump loyalists or people who are on board for this autocratic government or this AKA dictatorship. His think tank lobbied strongly in recent weeks for recess appointments, a means by which Trump could attempt to circumvent the Senate's confirmation process. Trump was quick to follow Vought's lead as he posted on Truth Social, partly in caps, any Republican senator seeking the coveted leadership, all caps, position in the United States Senate must agree to recess appointments, adding, "We need positions filled immediately." Vought is not only the intellectual architect of the Trump effort to remake the federal government, but a master of mano bureaucratic slashing. He did not get full control of the reins at OMB until late Trump's first term, but he has since spent 4 years planning what would happen when he gets OMB back, helpfully laying it all out in a 25-page Heritage Foundation manifesto. Oh my God. I guess this pop-up ad just comes up every couple of minutes. I don't know. It's for Walmart. Of course it is. Of course it is. Let's see. He argues that a sprawling federal bureaucracy all too often is carrying out its own policy plans and preferences, or worse yet, the policy plans and preferences of a radical, supposedly woke faction of the country. Vought is a devout Trump loyalist. He numbered among the quartet of only 4 out of 44 of Trump's first-term cabinet members who said they were for him in 2023. Vought's resume boasts 7 years as vice president of Heritage Action for America, an affiliate of the Heritage Foundation, which is super conservative. We talked about them a lot on here. Said to be armed with the research and policies of the Heritage Foundation, where the infamous Project 2025 was born. And I think that's basically all we need for that. So that's just a little bit going over what that is. And last, we will round out, perfect timing, we'll round out this episode with an article from the Free Press. And I saw this, it was like a journalist investigation that I initially saw starting out in a series of like reels on Instagram and posts and photos that a reporter named Olivia Reingold was doing. And I just found it interesting. Again, I'm not pro-Palestine or pro-Israel. I think the whole thing is a mess. And, I like I said, I do think that these people in Palestine need to stop being slaughtered. I think it's crazy, the reaction that Israel had. But I also do feel like there is a threat to Jewish people existing that is being downplayed. So that's just to let everyone know where I stand, which I've said the whole time. But this is from the Free Press. And it says, how to make your campus Palestinian. And again, I do want to reiterate, the Free Press, it's like, it was created by basically liberals gone rogue who now seem to be more conservative than conservatives, or like, I don't even know how I would categorize them, but that's what's going on here. At the largest gathering for Palestine in the U.S., college students are taught how to take the anti-Israel movement to the next level. Olivia Reingold was there. I just found this interesting. Yeah. It's the day after Thanksgiving, but about 50 American college students are not with their families or watching football or trying to snag a Black Friday deal. They're packed into a conference room in the Chicago suburb of Tinley Park, trying to figure out how they'd handle an Israeli official visiting their campus. And again, this also kind of goes into like, we've seen this happen with Christians. We saw it happen with Amish people. I think it's smaller groups of people who find ways to, unofficially unionize. I think we often like say, oh, let these, silly little groups meet. And I think there's really is a lot more power in them. And so we should just, know that they exist. And they've turned it into a contest between two teams, female versus males. A woman in a purple hijab named Jenin Elaharthi is leading the game. She hits the timer on her phone and tells the group they have 5 minutes to figure out strategies. A war criminal is coming to your campus, said Al-Harithi, a recent graduate of the University of Illinois at Chicago. What are you going to do? A woman in a green chiffon hijab is the first to speak up, saying the students should form a protest, starting with recruiting demonstrators over the secure messaging app Telegram. I think we should demand like international justice, she said, spreading her hands wide as she imagined the words on a poster, and put emergency rally in the school Telegram group. Then a young woman with dark curly hair speaks. She says it is important to deflect any accusations of anti-Semitism, so she would enlist the group Jewish Voice for Peace to join the protest. The Anti-Defamation League calls JVP a radical organization that advocates for the eradication of Zionism and the boycott of Israel. The group has more than 25 chapters across the country. Last spring, Columbia University banned its chapter for using threatening rhetoric and intimidation at campus events. The first complaint is going to be, oh, this is anti-Semitic, the woman explained of the protest. I think we need like a JVP or something like that with Jewish people. We want white people and Jewish students there. This exercise, called Crisis Room, was part of the programming for college students at the 17th Annual Convention for Palestine, the largest gathering of its kind in the U.S., which was attended by thousands last weekend. The event is hosted by American Muslims for Palestine, AMP, a nonprofit currently facing a House probe over allegations it has substantial ties to Hamas. And again, we have seen a lot of people kind of asking pretty ignorant questions to Muslim politicians about their, being forced to say like, how do you feel about Hamas, when it's really like a much larger conversation. So I just want to, put that in there. The purpose of the conference, which attracts Palestine supporters from all over the country, is to galvanize their base, according to John Shansner, who specializes in Iran-backed terrorism at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. But there is a part of me that sees, that I think like other countries are kind of watching like America do their bidding for them in some ways. So I think that's like where you need to be like, is this like, what is this for exactly? There is evidence that AMP has been helping drive the anti-Israel movement, consuming college campuses. Of late, Shanzer told me. Indeed, the group's executive director, Osama Burshade, was spotted speaking to student activists last spring at both Columbia and George Washington universities, meaning like are there other countries like kind of, sending representatives to the U.S. in which the priority would then be like loyalty to another country that is not the U.S., which I think internally is actually an issue. And it doesn't mean that you can't support other countries, right? Or other ethnicities or other religions, etc. Abershad, who federal authorities had previously designated as a known or suspected terrorist, again, to reiterate, terrorist is in the eye of the beholder, told Columbia students this is not only a genocide that is being committed in Gaza, this is also a war on us here in America. Less than 48 hours later, he appeared at George Washington's encampment telling a crowd of keffiyeh-clad students, Zionism is no less evil than white supremacy. Interesting. This year's Convention for Palestine also featured speakers such as AMP board member Salah Sarsour, who was arrested and imprisoned in 1995 by Israel for 8 months for supporting Hamas, and Nihad Awad, executive director of the Council on American Islamic Relations, who last year said he was happy to see Hamas carry out its October 7th attack on Israel, which left 1,200 dead. Shansner, who testified before Congress in 2016 about AMP, said that over the last decade, the group has invested a great deal of effort and, from what we can tell, no small amount of money in cultivating the next generation of activists on behalf of the Palestinian cause. And that is the most interesting part of this article to me, right? He added that the group has done a lot to galvanize people in support of Hamas. I bought a 2-day ticket to the convention to find out how the movement is prepping American college students for the next wave of anti-Israel protests. And there's a video she makes that you can watch on the website. It's also on her Instagram, Olivia Reingold. The convention's programming for college kids is called Campus Activism Track and included sessions on the following: Make Your Campus Palestinian, which taught how to amplify the voices of Palestinian students and communities on college campuses. Former student activists, including from Chicago's DePaul and Loyola University, shared strategies for how to oppose anti-Palestinianism. Okay, that sounds fine. A Know Your Rights session featured Rivka Falane, a fellow at Palestine Legal who specializes in defending student protesters. Okay, sounds fine. Falana previously headed DePaul's chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine, the widely banned campus group that receives financial support from AMP. Okay, getting a little... Also there, Youssef Haswa, a former University of Chicago student whose degree was initially withheld after he became a prominent participant in his school's encampment last spring. Bringing activism to professionalism, in which students heard speakers describe how they integrated Palestinian activism into their craft. Guests included Ashraf al-Mashaharwi, a producer with credits at Al Jazeera, as well as a pharmacist, a software engineer, and an English teacher at a nearby public school. Wow, talk about overachiever. In a session called In Front of the Lens, speakers taught college students how to write a press release and handle tricky questions from reporters on whether they support terrorism. Okay, a girl with a keffiyeh covering, but again, that could be because of right, like, so they're saying like they need this article is implying that it should be easy to state that you do not support terrorism, but how I really see this is more so like, well, terrorism, again, is in the eye of the beholder. So how do you not scare people by saying that you support a terrorist organization or something that has been deemed a terrorist organization, but that you do not feel what they are doing is terroristic behavior? A girl with a keffiyeh covering her head took a stab at answering that question, telling the crowd, I would say, no, I do not support terrorism. And then I would go over the things that Israel does. I would say, I do not support the eviction of innocent Palestinians. I do not support the shooting of Palestinian children. That's a good answer. She continued, you don't want them to put you on the defensive. You have to put them on the defensive. The student attendees who were enrolled at St. Xavier University, DePaul University, Loyola University, and other Midwest colleges nodded in agreement. Meanwhile, in a plenary session entitled Criminalizing Palestine Solidarity, the Age of the New McCarthyism, Falane thanked the young activists in the crowd for their role in pushing the pro-Palestine movement forward. They are at the front lines of the liberation movement, she said of the student protesters. The students are the ones confronting these neoliberal Zionist institutions. Falane added that since this past January, her firm, Palestine Legal, had received more than 900 requests for legal support related to campus suppression. What these numbers tell you is that while the movement from Palestinian liberation is becoming fiercer, so is the repression. And we see that with everything. Any time a movement becomes more fierce, we see the repression become more fierce as well. Many people sit around and say what the students are doing. May was crazy. April was amazing with the encampments and such. Look at what the students are doing. But it's like, no, my friend, what are you doing? How are you supporting the liberation movement? Okay. So yeah, I just thought that was a very interesting article. And again, I do recommend watching the footage of on Olivia Reingold's Instagram if you are so inspired to do so. And that is our show for today. Action-packed, like I promised it would be. If you want to send me an email, it's withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. Again, sometimes you guys DM me. I cannot reiterate enough how much more helpful it is and how much more likely it is that I will feature your story or your comments on the show if you email it to withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. There's absolutely way too many places to access me, and that is where I would like to be accessed for that show. Setting a boundary. Look at me, queen. And if, again, save your New Year's Eve plans. I don't think the ticket link is it up yet because I got to make a poster for that show because I just agreed to do it. But New Year's Eve, 6 p.m., New York Comedy Club, East Village. I'll put out the ticket link soon. So make sure if you're going to be in New York City for New Year's Eve that you do your pregame with us. Action-packed, star-studded lineup. Chloe LeBranch, as a reminder, lives in Austin now. So it'll be really cool to have her in New York. But if you're in Austin, make sure to check her out. She does a lot of shows locally. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm at Philanthropy Gal, also on X at Philanthropy Gal. Everyone's moving to Blue Sky now, that they're fleeing X, and because for a while no one was on Blue Sky, and now I can't get into my Blue Sky account, even though I was one of the first people to have it, and I actually got the handle Corinne Fisher, and I'm pissed, and I don't know how to get in there. So if any of you work at Blue Sky, send me an email. You can follow Mike at them Harrington, and please make sure to subscribe to our Without a Country podcast, Instagram, and our YouTube. But most importantly, subscribe to our YouTube, even if you listen to this on Luminary or Spotify or Apple or iTunes, wherever you listen to this. Just hit subscribe next time you're on the old YouTube at Without a Country. And if you want to join the Patreon, it's patreon.com/withoutacountry. Thank you so much for helping to pursue the truth with me. Okay, well, that wasn't connected, I don't think. But I said, wait, do it again.
Thanks, bitch. Have a great day.
There you go. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.